everybody. My name is Jim Hemphill. I write about filmmaking for IndieWire, and it is my great pleasure to bring up the filmmakers behind Andor, starting with sound designer, supervising sound editor, and re-recording mixer, David Acord. Composer, Brandon Roberts. Writer, Dan Gilroy. Executive producer is Wohlenberg. Actors, Adria Arjona and Genevieve O'Reilly. Executive producer and actor Diego Luna. And creator, writer, and executive producer Tony Gilroy. So, like everybody, I was a big fan of Andor Season 1, and I thought you guys with Season 2 just knocked it out of the park. I mean, I just thought it got even better. And I'm curious for all of you who worked on Season 1, which I think is everybody maybe except for Brandon, what did you learn from Season 1 that informed your approach going forward here?
We survived. I mean, we survived. What did we learn? We brought back, almost absolutely everybody came back, production-wise, right? So we had an institutional memory. I don't know, Sanne, from a production point of view, what do you think we learned the most?
I think we learned that our setup worked, and we really formed such a strong alignment with everybody to inhabit Tony's and Andor's DNA, and we learned how to build worlds and make it truthful and real and all those, and everything that belongs to it. So coming back was exciting, and it was a bit like coming home, and yet there was a huge avalanche of more work ahead. Tony's appetite is always endless. It was very exciting. We were proud of what we'd done, and we just thought we just have to be even better this time.
Our system, we had a system. It's a unique system. I think every show probably has a unique system, mostly. So we had a very unique system that had evolved through COVID and a bunch of different things, and it worked. And so we just doubled down on everything that we've been doing.
Mm-hmm. We also learned from the reaction.
Yeah.
We experienced sharing the first season. We heard, and today you actually can witness the conversation, right? And we listened. And we participated, and we got affected, and we came back, and I think that had an impact on how we achieved this second season, also because that conversation was open,
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious, from a writing standpoint, Tony and Dan, did the fact that the first season was well received, does that liberate you in a sense and maybe make you feel like you can be more audacious, or is it still, do you still
it hadn't been released when we were already, the second season was pretty well sketched out long before then, and the writer's room was before was it before the show was released, Danny? It was, right? Yeah.
The writer's room was definitely.
Definitely. Yeah. We were pretty well advanced by the time. The reaction helped us. Funding changed. The dynamic, the economics had changed dramatically, right? Not because just like a weather change. In the beginning, it was like, oh my God, it's Pearl Harbor. Build aircraft carriers. That was season 1, and then when the show was about to be released, and we're about to start season 2. It was like, well, we don't need aircraft carriers right now, and we're like, well, we're halfway through building it, and we could either not build it, or we can't put a dinghy at the ass end of the ship. We're either going to do it right or not. So those conversations were complicated, and that was a tricky process.
Also Tony took a big gamble even going into this. Tony's taken an approach to massive IP that's radically different than anything that's ever been done before in this world. And in the first writer's room, there was not trepidation, there wasn't worry, but we weren't sure what the reception was ultimately going to be. So going to the second room, to understand that there really is a very strong appetite for character-driven, real drama, that entertains at the same time. It was definitely heartening.
Mm-hmm. Diego, I'm curious for you. You know, your character obviously goes through such enormous, change throughout the series, going from this kind of reluctant recruit to the hero. And I'm curious how you kind of track something like that over the course of 2 seasons. Like in season 2, what for you were the key moments that were really important, that were sort of like your North Star as an actor?
I think the beauty of the structure of this second season is that happens in every episode, right? By going to those few days of the year that change everything, it's always crucial. I don't think there's a single block where something crucial doesn't happen to every character in this show. If it doesn't, you're not on the episode, basically, because the episodes are about those moments. And I think, yes, Cousin has to witness so much, has to feel, has to understand he's capable of feeling, of connecting with someone the way he connects with Biggs. He has to lose many things, many battles. He has to understand Luthen. There's a lot that has to happen for him to get to the moment when we see him in Rogue One. And I think that's the beauty of the writing, is that it's all there. It's yes, you have to fill the blank spaces. You have to do a lot of work by yourself, but the page sets you in the right direction. There is no confusion. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, I love that structure. How did you guys come up with that idea of each 3 episodes jumping ahead a year?
Desperation. No, I mean, we originally agreed, we'll do 5 seasons, and then we said 5 seasons, and then in the beginning Disney said, well, we want 12 episodes because we want adhesion, and that'll help us choke down the money. And so we're like, okay, 12, and then it's 5 times 12. Yeah, we're 60 episodes, of course. And then COVID and everything else, and by the time we started shooting season 1 and up in Scotland, and I got out of quarantine, I could get back over there, he and I went in the backyard of a little hotel in Scotland and had a drink and went, we are so fucked. And because we was just like, man, we will never, the scale of it was absolutely impossible. I mean, literally, you couldn't do it. And we were like, what are we going to do? We said we do 5, and you'll be 80, and I'll be in a memory care facility, but then providentially, we shoot in blocks of 3. That's always been our organizing principle. I don't really know what it's Sanne dictated that in the beginning, and we just accepted it. So that's what we've been doing. So it's blocks of 3, and we had 4 blocks of 3, and we had 4 years to cover. And go back upstairs to the hotel room and go, wow, what if we did a year? What if we made it jump a year? And then what's that first year look like? Well, I got to come back for the wedding. I don't really want to. God, what if it's a 3-day wedding? And what if it's just the 3 days? Well, that specificity won't hold up for the other episodes, but but it did. And it's like, wow, all this negative space, and then so it came about from problem solving. Yeah, and then it turned into then it becomes really exciting because you've never worked on anything like that. The writers have never worked on anything like that. It becomes proof of concept. Will it work? Can you get rid of what? But it ended up giving a propulsive, old school screenwriting style to something that really had scale of time.
Mm-hmm. And also it was this idea of we had to get to the end. We had to get to what we promised, right? And it's not something you can hand to someone else, we had to make sure we set Rogue One and get to the end, because the end of this is Rogue One, right? Conceptually, so it was pretty clear that we had to deliver, because we were enjoying the process, because the first season was we could tell we were doing something special.
Tony bringing up the wedding actually reminds me, Genevieve, of one of my favorite moments in the whole season is your dance that you do. And I was wondering a little bit if you could talk, let's do it. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you approach something like that and what was going through your head. And I mean, it's just such a great, I feel like somehow you convey so many different emotions at once in that dance.
Thank you. Thank you. I think it exists. You have to see it within the framework of the structure of the piece, what they were talking about before. And it did feel from our perspective that we were shooting 4 films. And so the crescendo of that film for Mon is that moment. There's so much in those 3 episodes. You learn about a culture from my character. You learn about a whole culture, a whole history, an orthodoxy. There's so much that's implied within it. So as an actor, what's brilliant is there's so much to carry. You know, there's fruits and vegetables and meat. I don't know why I'm using food. I'm sorry, that just came out. But you have a rich tapestry of things that you're carrying as a character, and within the architecture of the writing, you then have this driving force and this crescendo at the end where she's carrying, and also you have I think, a bit of an idealistic character at that moment. And by the end of that film, she has tacitly agreed to the murder of her friend. The relationship with Luthen is very murky and it feels dangerous. And so you can carry all of that into that sequence. And it looks like a Renaissance painting because of Luke Hull's designs and Michael Wilkinson's costumes and Emma Scott's hair and makeup. But what you're examining is the chaos within character, with the chaos and the pain within a woman. And what a gift for them to write her in a way that it could be done through dance. I mean, that's a gift. She's a pretty straight-laced character, you know. She's like a column. She doesn't move very much. So for them to write that and gift that to me, I mean, that was just. It was also one of my favorite and most special days filming ever. We were all together. I was after the strike. It was actually my very last day on Andor, and.
Best day of the shoot,
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, and so you can play pain and chaos, and you can play it all in a dance. Thank you.
Well, you bringing up the strike actually raises a question for me for Sanne, which is, how did the strikes impact the logistics of the production this season?
I mean, being based in London and working with, by and large, really a British crew and Europeans, it impacted us much less than other productions, and luckily. And as luck would have happened, also Tony had come to the end of his writing schedule, and everybody, we had all the scripts, and we had page turned all the last block just about, when we lost him for, 6 months, something like that. But we really were ready to continue, and we had such a good relationship and really knowledge of his intent, and all of us, that we could carry on filming. The SAG strike in the end, did not allow us to finish, which was slightly, after 34 weeks of production, it seemed slightly crushing to have 3 weeks left to return to, particularly as we had grown a year before. August 23, when we were shooting July, August, we had grown a crop, and that was the basis of our world, and that crop was meant to be harvested when we wrapped and completed, and it was harvested, and we had our extraordinary green stream put tons of it into boards, and we stored them on the Bond stage in Pinewood for 6 months to return later. But yes, I think by that time we also knew, chuck anything at us, we can continue. We came through pandemics and working with double PPE and losing our Lord and Master, and it was kind of, we can do this too, and we did. And it somehow allowed us to come back to this one day of the wedding and the dance, and we were all together, and it was kind of a really happy ending, against many odds.
Something Genevieve was saying reminded me of something else I love about the show, which is that even though it's an action series, I feel like so much of the writing and so much of the acting on it is conveying these internal processes. I mean, you really see the characters thinking on this show a lot, and I feel like, Adria, your performance especially you do so much with expression and gesture and things like, like we saw the scene where you're making the decision to leave. And how do you, I guess this is kind of a dumb question, but I mean, like, how do you convey all of that in scenes where you don't necessarily have the words on the page?
Hi everyone. I might not have necessarily the words on the page, but the world is so there. I mean, Tony has created such a beautiful character for me to play, and a really, really beautiful journey for her to go through. So I do think it is on the page, and I think I just had the best gift, like you were saying. Every scene in this show feels like a little gift. As an actor, you're just like, wow, and you finally get this amazing material to work and to play with. So Tony gifted me this beautiful journey that Biggs goes through, and it's incredibly challenging. This season was very challenging for Biggs, and it was very challenging for me as an actor, but I learned so much, and I think Tony just pushed me in every scene just a little bit more and a little bit more, and I think I grew from season 1, and I grew in season 2. I think this show has been my greatest school. I mean, I've gotten to work with these amazing people, and with production design, and Michael and Emma. You're learning from some of the best, and all you can do is kind of soak it in. And I also have him in front of me. So, and that's probably one of my greatest gifts in this whole show. I have the most generous actor to react from. It really is a reflection of how talented Diego is, and how great of a leader he is. In certain scenes, you don't have to do much. You have a beautiful scene that Tony structures, and then you have Diego in front of you. I'm like, I just get to sit back and really enjoy the journey and savor it. And I haven't gotten to do that much in my career. So it's everything about this show it's just been the greatest gift. I love this show so much.
Yeah, I think it shows. I mean, honestly, I think that's another reason people, like audiences like myself, love the show, is you can feel the love of filmmaking in it. I mean, in every episode. And, Dan, one of the most obviously incredible things on the show this season is the Gorman Massacre. And it's so beautifully constructed, and it's so unsettling and disturbing. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you approach something like that. Where do you start in terms of shaping something like that on the page?
That starts at the beginning of the second season writer's room, where Tony drops 80 pages of incredibly detailed outline on the desk. And then I and Bo Willimon, who was the showrunner on House of Cards, and Tom Bissell, the four of us, with Sanne and Luke Hall and other people in the room, we start to hammer it out, and we start to look at what the characters are doing and how we can maximize the dramatic effect of what they're going through. And then once you start to get a through line, since that was my block, then I break off and I start having individual conversations with Tony and Luke and Sanne about what's financially possible, what's possible from a production standpoint. And it's incredibly time consuming, and you're just grinding away until finally I take a pass at it and I write my draft. Tony sends me back, I write another one. He takes it and improves it and conforms it, and then it gets handled. So it's an intense group effort to make something that at the finished product looks, oh, this is like amazing. It's just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours, which are enjoyable for me because I'm a writer and I love doing what I'm doing. I think everybody who's involved in it on every level enjoyed what they were doing. But it's a major group effort.
Tony, how do you decide in terms of which blocks each of the writers are going to take? I mean, is it like, was this block chosen for Dan because it feeds into his strengths, or yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I took the first one. I know I'm going to get my hands on all of them in the end, so I'm not too nervous. But I want him to Danny. I had the most confidence of everybody in the room to write action. We've done a lot of and Gorman Massacre is going to require a lot of really detailed action work and a lot of physics and a lot of working with Luke, and how long does it take to walk from here to here, and how long can you stay away from these characters? And for Bo, there's a lot of politics in his block, and it just seemed a natural place. It's a spy thing, and Tom Bissell came into the room for the second season as a much more of a Star Wars fan, you know, much more of a Star Wars person than any of us were. And because we have to trend into Rogue, and because we wanted to keep ourselves honest and sort of, you know, that melding process at the end, we have to really seamlessly go in. It really felt it would be helpful to have some orientation there. That was seemed straight. These episodes divvied up pretty easily.
So you saying the thing about moving into Rogue actually leads me to a question for Brandon, because something I noticed about the score is it seems like over the course of the season you start off kind of using more electronic stuff than you use later on. Like it kind of becomes more orchestral as the season goes on. I mean, am I correct in recognizing that? And was that something you were doing to sort of ease the transition into Rogue One?
You are correct, sir. Yeah, no, so a big part of it was you don't just come in and create musical continuity from season 2, but then the big challenge was how do you hand off to the palette that's established by Giacchino in Rogue One? And the palettes are very different. So you have almost an industrial palette that Nick brilliantly set up in season 1, and then you have a pretty orchestral palette devoid of almost all electronics for Rogue One. And so where we decided to do that was once we got past pretty much the episode you watched, once you got past 209 is when we really started to make that segue. And hopefully the handoff is seamless, the sleight of hand. But it was really fun, to be honest, to figure out how to do that. But
well, as a composer, do you find it, you know, having those sort of bookends of Bertel and Giacomo to kind of merge together with your own sensibility? Do you find that having those guardrails is helpful? Do you like it? Is it constricting?
no, it's a fear sandwich, because you're basically. I mean, think about this for a second. Like the music for Star Wars is like it's wonderful to have the opportunity, but also you have. You know, you're coming from one of one of the great modern composers, Bertel. Then you're going into Giacchino, one of the other great modern composers, and you're wedged in between. And on either side of those guys, you have John Williams, who's always the specter, always there. So on some level, you have to first get past that fear. And once you do that, I think it's like with everybody in their respective departments, once you get past that fear part, it's all about just doing the work and what does the narrative need and what does the narrative need musically. And then it's just about slowly chipping away. And this is where I think I benefited greatly from all of you guys having established a well-oiled machine from season 1, is you guys had a process, and Tony had it down how he wanted to do it, and it worked really, really well from a musical standpoint, just speaking from the musical standpoint. But it was very intimidating at first, but then it became just a joy.
Well, and I want to ask you and David about the massacre sequence as well, because I think the music and the sound design are so important. Obviously, a lot of it is Dan's writing and the performances and everything like that, but the music and sound do so much. Brandon, talk a little bit about your approach, kind of similar question to Dan in terms of how he structured and got started on that massacre sequence. How did you approach it from a scoring point of view?
I think you can break it down into 30 minutes of building tension. So Tony was pretty clear. I want the audience to feel sick, and this is not what's going to happen. This is inevitable, right? So the idea was, how can we make the audience feel sick for 30 minutes leading to that first blaster shot? And so we really leaned into that. But then you have the second third of that episode, which has massive narrative and story arcs all coming to a head from going back to season 1 even. And so you have the dramatic part of that season, or that episode, and the musical needs for that, which was huge. And then I remember at one point, Tony calls and he's like, "I think we need a female choir." I was like, "Oh, okay." So then we have that into the mix, and then at a certain point, the choir's got to learn Gorman language. So we had like a linguist out with the choir out there. I remember getting a call from Sanne saying he wants choir. And he was like, yeah, we're quite, is it necessary? Well, it's not necessary, but it's going to be really cool.
That record was the most beautiful day.
Yeah, it was.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
It was so special.
Yeah, it was. So I think that going back to your question about that episode in particular, I think probably for every department that was like a tour de force of a, it's in my opinion, it's like a feature film in itself, and sound as well. It was just, yeah.
I just want to say one thing, that he alludes to the fear sandwich, but it's a very tough thing that he had to do, and it was really scary. And we just had the greatest time making it happen. It was a really death-defying situation for a minute, and it's like, who is this guy? And wow, he's really good. And get out there and come out to Tarzana, and man, you know what? If you can come in and not just make brilliant new stuff, and not just like let your ego slip when it needs to, so you can modify the other stuff that you're inherited, and then also push hard enough for the things that you think are right to take us into Rogue. I mean, I'm just really proud of Brandon. I really am.
Wow, thank you very much.
David, talk about from a sound design perspective how you approach something like the massacre sequence.
Right. I think, as Brandon kind of pointed out, the episode is largely a crescendo. It starts with the sort of quiet city. There's that sort of subtle alarm happening. Cassian's building his weapon. And that's kind of the pulse that's kind of set as we kind of build. And then there are sort of beats as you go along. The crowd comes in and they're chanting. There's a beat, and then we're singing the anthem, and then there's a beat when the first sniper rifle hits, and then the music goes out, and then that's when the chaos stops, and we just keep building and building all these little moments, these beats. Cyril's quiet moment as he's kind of reflecting and looking around is, for as quiet as it is probably the scariest part, and it kind of builds up, for me anyway, to the Cassie and Cyril bar brawl, which is just the gnarliest bar brawl you've ever seen, and all the way up through to the K2 getting crushed against the wall, and that's guided by story. It's guided by Brandon's score, and from a sound design, sound effects perspective, we're there to sort of support that, find the moments to support music versus sound effects, dialogue, and that sort of thing.
How much trial and error is there just figuring out, like I always watch scenes like that, and I think it's such a fine line where if you do too much, you're going to kind of overwhelm the audience and they're not going to know what they're hearing, and but you want to have enough to be selling the spectacle. I mean, how much trial and error is there for you just calibrating that balance and getting it exactly right?
There's quite a bit. I'm lucky enough when we're final mixing to have John Gilroy with me on stage. He's the picture editor on the show. And he and I sort of shape the mix together and find the moments. Like, obviously there's a big chaotic battle happening, but you don't need to hear all of that at once. It's more about finding the most dangerous elements or whatever's going to pull your focus story-wise and hit those, whether it's a scream or a laser or whatever it is, the music in the moment. That's kind of our job in the final mix, is to sort of guide the viewer through the story with our track.
Can I embroider on that just for 1 second? Because I know there's a lot of tech. I mean, I know this is a hip crowd, inside baseball crowd. The one thing that Skywalker Sound has brought, and that Johnny's brought, and all the stuff that we've done. So it was 24 hours of. We've been in a mixing room 24 hours, and they worked for months and months and months beforehand. But the coolest thing that they do is we're freaks for geography. We're freaks that everybody know where you are all the time. That's Luke builds the set, so it's like a clock, so we know where everybody is. I mean, there's times you want people to be disoriented, but most of the time we want to know exactly where we are. So when you come back for these moments, because we're carrying so many characters, that you always oriented, and they're there, and it takes that long to get here, and that's how far the shot is, and they could never walk there. Our sound design, you could just do the bravura, bring all the effects and have everything, and you could probably do a pretty decent job. Every single thing from the moment we started is perspectized in a way that it's directed, it's mixed, it's always oriented to the physical reality of what we want. It's the same attention to detail the actors are doing, and that the ADs are trying to bring the same attention to what's this actual moment and how does it relate to that, comes through in sound, and you're just spoiled by it. I could never work that again without having that level of articulation. You really get spoiled. It's really, I mean, it's a thing. Yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you made that point because I do think that's something that really separates this show. Like I hate action movies where I don't know where anything is in relation to each other, and I feel like you guys do a really good job on this show. It's almost like a Kurosawa movie or something in terms of just like the keeping the audience acclimated
We're
in the
freaks for it.
space.
I mean, if you're doing Black Hawk Down, you want to be disoriented. That's a movie where like you have a brilliant geographic director who says, "Oh, you don't know where you are," and that's really cool because then he takes the floor out from under you. But yeah, most of the time it's because people don't have time, or the script isn't right, or they're rushing, or they're half-assed, or someone didn't do their job. But like this, we've been tucked away from day one on this shit, and yeah, no.
We also, with each director, has a very long prep. They spent 4 months prepping the 3-episode block and, really collaborating with every department because by the time we turn over, it has to all been nailed down and we need to know exactly what's a VFX shot and what isn't, and sound have already been thought of, and music cues often happen in vision and they are there when we're doing it, and really every element is very, very thought out, and that's just a real joy and allows us to actually tackle a beast like this for the small screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the beast is the right word. Like I always think when I look at this show, what's great about it is it's so huge in scale, but it also is just jammed with intimate details. Like I think about just creating the whole Gorman culture and language and planet and everything, and like everything on it feels so thought through. Tony, how do you like work on something on this kind of scale and communicate to everybody up here and all your department heads what you're doing so that everybody's on the same page making the same movie when you're doing something spread out over 12 hours and however many hundreds of characters and everything else?
Total communication all the time from day one. Everybody gets to. There's no secrets on the show. It's like the NYPD. If you see something, say something. Everybody's a filmmaker. Nobody ever abuses that deputization. I've never seen it, and all you get is quality out of it. So everybody knows what they're doing. You are. And we've said this the past couple days. This is our theme. Building a show where you can inspire mania, where mania is like a merit badge. Like go crazy. Instead of people, inhibiting your work or whatever, really you want to go that far, go for it. Go for it. Because everybody wants to go crazy. You wouldn't be in this room and you wouldn't be in this business if you didn't want to be, if you weren't somewhat obsessive and disturbed and want to go all the way. So people want to, but most of the time you're inhibited. People go, oh, I don't know, or we can't talk to Joyce now because she's on the phone, whatever. But like, it's all that crap. And then the most important thing, you can't think about it, the leviathan of it. You can't think of this groaning board of endless stuff. You just have to go teaspoon by teaspoon and go, okay, we know we gotta go and we know what we're doing, but like you just nail by nail by nail, buttonhole by buttonhole by buttonhole. Those 3 things combined, if you have the money and we had the money, and people leave you alone, it works. It can work.
Going back to that point about like the space and everything, Dan, I'm curious for you as a writer. I always think of you actually. Obviously, you're a great writer, but I also think of you as a great director because I love Nightcrawler and Roman Israel so much. Yeah, absolutely. Like 2 of the great American movies in the last 20 years, in my opinion. And I'm wondering if your experience directing, has that helped inform you as a writer when you are doing these kind of big action sequences and like just thinking about space and balancing all of these characters and stuff on the page?
It definitely is an advantage, and it makes you think visually. But also, Tony and I are big believers in compression, starting scenes late, never letting the audience get ahead of you. So as a director, you're always thinking about that, and when you apply that to writing, Tony's a fanatic, and I am certainly, to just keep things, if you can show something in a visual that in its first version is 4 pages, it's better the second, it's better as the visual. Keep it short. It's a visual medium in a lot of ways. I mean, there's a lot to be said in this show. There's a lot of ideas that are transmitted, but as a director, coming to it as a writer, I love writing so much that the directing side of it is really probably just informed, having not a budget, there's no question about it. I'm very sensitive to budget. You wouldn't believe it by some of the stuff I've written.
You
but,
are.
but I actually
Anna doesn't
am very
believe
sensitive. I actually am very sensitive to budget, and I know that. But yeah, I am. And I also, as a director, it hones you visually.
Well, I feel like we're just getting started, but I'm getting the signal that we're out of time. So, but it's a great show. I want to thank you all for coming out and talking with me about it, and thank you all for coming in and watching.